Welcome to our film club. In this screencast, I'll be reviewing some of the things that we did for documentaries when we were studying them in film club. The documentary that we screened and we watched as a club was Living on $1. It's excellent, and I think it's available on most streaming services if you'd like to watch it. Documentaries are just that. They're things that are real. These were the two questions that I posed when we began our unit on documentaries. And then we talked about, well, how do you do it? Pre-production is very complicated in a documentary because you want to make sure that you have interviews that are scheduled that you'll be recording, but you don't just want to watch a slew of interviews or an interview solid. In pre-production, too, you think about the setting that the people you're going to interview or you're going to film interact in, and you shoot footage of that too. It could even be shooting footage of things that are rather static, like things within the environment around that person. Like if you were shooting a documentary about someone who was homeless, you may want to shoot what's called the B-roll of the area in which they reside. You could even contrast that with living in an average home. Then you'd have your interview too. So in documentaries and in pre-production, you think about what's going to be your A-roll, which are your interviews and your topics, and then your B-roll too, which might be things that are just within the environment. Then in production, you shoot both of those rolls of film. So you'll have a lot of footage that you'll have to edit in post-production, which are all of the things to make your documentary into one coherent story that you have to do in terms of editing and putting film pieces together. So how do you make one? First of all, you just have to find an idea that's interesting and fun. And then you research that as best as you can. Looking into it, thinking about interview questions, and thinking about what you want to shoot and how you want to shoot your interviews too. And then the structure of your story develops not only through your interview, but through what I talked about a little bit earlier, the setting in which your interviewees or interviewee interact. Then you structure how you're going to shoot the documentary. You don't want to have an interview in which the person's just kind of sitting down and it's a Q&A. That's really boring to watch. So you want to have, like I said earlier, your A-roll and your B-roll mixed together, but you also want to have some movement within your film and within the interview. In terms of recording your interviews and your background on your B-roll, make sure that the audio captures everything around it. Sometimes, too, when you're interviewing somebody, if they have a tendency to swallow their words or not speak clearly, you have to consider how to capture the way that they talk in a way that it'll record well and you'll be able to have it as a coherent part of your film. When you're interviewing people for a documentary, you want to build a lot of rapport with them so they're comfortable talking to you. And then, as I've been saying over and over, because that's truly what's at the crux of a documentary, you have to edit your work and put it together so that it tells a cohesive story. In documentaries, even with somebody's face, you want to consider the rule of thirds with your subject. This is a good example of the rule of thirds. Even if you're interviewing the man who is setting off these fireworks in this particular documentary, you want to make sure you don't have just a square of his face while he's talking. You want to take the whole context into your documentary. So that's it for documentaries. As I said, we also watched Living on $1, and if you want to check it out, it's something that's easy to stream. Thanks for tuning in to our Merrill Middle School Film Club channel.